everyone. I'm Aderonke, and welcome to another episode of the Grad Connect, where we're using our career insights to help professionals find their way. Today, I have a very, very special guest. She is making waves all across the music scene in Detroit and internationally, and she is a complete artist dabbling in many forms of creative expressions. You know and love her music, and today she's here to talk to us about her journey into becoming an artist and the reality of living life as an artist. Please help me welcome KESSWA. Yay!
Yay! Okay,
you're here.
I'm here.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm excellent. I'm actually really excited because, you're very much a celebrity to me.
Oh my gosh.
Even though me and Cassie grew up, can I call you Cassie?
Yeah.
Okay. Me and Cassie grew up together, back in the day in church, and so we go way, 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 way back. And so, first of all, thank you for doing this.
Of course.
I'm just interested to know, how you began this journey, how the journey's going, of course, and then just the reality of living life as an artist. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we're gonna get into all the questions. I'm gonna ask you a bunch of stuff, so get ready. Yeah. Just tell me what you do. If I was to say hi, if you were at a career fair and they were hi, Cassie, tell us about yourself. What would you say?
I would say that I'm an interdisciplinary artist.
Ooh.
And
I've never heard that before.
Yeah. So essentially it means that I do lots of things across different media.
Okay.
And none of those specific mediums is more important or outweighs the other. They're all equal.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
And okay.
Yeah.
So what are the mediums first? Lay it down for us. I know, but not everybody watching may know. So tell us what the mediums are.
So I'm a vocalist. Okay. I'm a DJ. Okay. I am a weaver, meaning I make textiles. Wow. I am a hair artist, so I make editorial, sculptural braid styles and works. I'm a filmmaker, and I also work in creative technology, specifically VR and creative coding.
Wow. That is amazing. Yes.
Thank you.
Talk about multifaceted. Okay. So was it always like this? Did you always have all these different creative mediums, or did they kind of develop as you grew older, as you explored?
I feel like naturally things developed. Okay. I was telling someone the other day that my first creative medium was hair.
Really? Mm-hmm. How did I not know that? Because I definitely needed braids. Back in the day.
I know.
We didn't have Instagram. You couldn't advertise.
I really couldn't. It was really word of mouth. And I think, my cousin, who is a hairstylist and salon owner now, was the person who taught me to braid. And I had to be maybe 6. Okay. Maybe even younger. And I've had so many braid mentors since then. Okay. But she introduced me to braiding, and I loved working with my hands. I would just braid my Barbie's hair. And then, shortly after being in elementary school with my peers, I was introduced to crocheting and knitting. And so fiber art has always been just kind of running in the subconscious part of my life, or the subterranean part of my creative life. And I think once I decided that, I really loved music more than I felt like the average person did, and I was probably in my freshman year at Wayne State at this time, I got so much positive feedback from people about my taste in music and just the amount of music that I listened to. And everyone around me was also creative. And I was wow, I wish that I was an artist. These people are artists. They weren't necessarily professional artists or career artists, but they all had hobbies or, artistic crafts that that kept them anchored while they were in school. Okay. And so I wanted something like that for myself. Wow. And since I could remember, I've always been really enamored by vocalists. It's always been symbolic of like sisterhood and like creative expression to me because of the 90s girl group era.
Oh, duh, yeah.
You know,
yeah,
so,
that'll make you feel it for sure.
you know,
yeah.
it's like, wow, I'd love to be around other girls singing and having a good time and being beautiful and stuff. And, but my parents, they wanted me to be more focused on medicine.
Okay, there it is.
Yeah.
So it got you too?
Yeah, oh, it got me. And it's still today, they're like, it's not too late to be a nurse.
Wow.
Yeah.
As a whole artist,
As
they
a
still
whole
do
artist,
that?
yeah.
That's hilarious,
Yeah.
but also very sad.
Yeah. I mean,
if we can be honest.
it's very sad,
Yeah.
but it's more sad because, you know, they are from a generation where that's all that they know. So it's like, oh, you'll never have a full frame of reference for what it is that I'm doing and why what I'm doing is significant.
Yeah.
And I invite them to things like they came to my graduation. It was the first time they were at Cranbrook, and my dad was like sharing with us how he drove past Cranbrook like weekly, and he was like, one day I'm gonna go in there.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
And it came full circle for him.
And he came full circle. And he got to watch me graduate and hear people talk about, you know, what it means to be an artist at this prestigious institution and see the museum, see my graduate piece in the museum. And I don't know what that means to him or if that meant anything to him, but, you know, I do know that it's providing a context for what it is that I'm pursuing that he didn't have before.
Yeah.
So...
And that is really, really a difficult piece. Like, I know, of course, being Nigerian girl, I've experienced a lot of the same things because, like, even growing up just being interested in music and, like, even how I spent like my free time in extracurriculars, it was always like, you know, if I had like a test to study for, if it was like, oh, I'm going to National Honor Society after school, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But if I was like, well, I'm going to choir, it was like, are you going to choir? You know?
Right.
So it's like, and the interesting thing is like, I love that even that little bit of it has come full circle for you, because it's like, it shows you where their heart is. It's like, no, we love you. You know, we just really think this is the best way. So it's not even like a personal thing. It's just like a perspective thing, I think. At least that's what I've told myself.
Yeah.
It makes me feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
But do you think that like, did that cause you any tension when you were, you know, a freshman and thinking like, okay, I want to be an artist like these people, or at least have artistry like these people? Was that a point of tension for you? Like, okay, I don't think I can really explore this at all.
Well, I think my personality, I learn more and more about my personality as I get older, it seems. I am so shameless about owning my desires. So, and sometimes that's what creates the tension between me and other folks. Like, when I see something that I admire, like, I feel completely open to it and inspired and excited most of the time. And excited to figure out how I can align myself with what it is that I want to experience. And so when I realized that, you know, because my siblings also were creative. Like my brother, he is amazing at drawing. And then my older sister, she went to Kenya. She studied dance until, you know, from freshman year to graduation. And she was like incredible at like modern and contemporary dance and stuff. And so like they were my introductions to like what it's like to live and have like a creative practice and be good at it. But they didn't continue like in their adult life. And so when you know, I dibbled and dabbled in drawing and dance when I was in school. And I knew from very young that I like loved singing, like that I had a heart for singing because it feels good. I think it's, you know, it's a somatic practice. So it helps to regulate your nervous system. And it's also like, you know that you are, and you know when you're singing in good form when you're not experiencing tension or like resistance, you know? So like singing helps align you with like pleasure and like harmony.
I love that.
In very metaphorical and literal ways. And I just like to feel good.
I know that's right.
You know?
That's a good enough reason, honestly, to pursue. I get it.
Just to feel good. But there's so much culturally, especially as a woman, that makes it difficult to own that desire towards singing. Like the misogyny, you know, the anti-Blackness, like feeling like you have to be a diva singer. Like, you know, people of other cultures don't necessarily have those problems when it comes to singing. They can sing, they can be folk singers, they can be indie alternative singers, they can do rock, do country, but like immediately if you tell someone you're a singer, they're gonna like measure you against like the best of the best divas of all time, you know, and I think it's really silly. So a lot of my work in the tension that I was navigating was like trying to get my parents, foolishly trying to get my parents to like understand and support earlier on, which created a lot of angst and like ambition, which I guess worked to my benefit in some ways. But then also unpacking and undoing my own internalized biases around like just embodying what an authentic artistic practice could look like for me.
Yeah. And so it seems like the most important, I love that your motivation, or like you're motivated by like your own pleasure that you get from doing music. And so do you think that is essentially that helped you like in forming your own identity as an artist? Because like that is part of the discouragement too, you know, it's like, well, I'm not Beyonce, you know, and I don't want to be Beyonce. And was there even a space, you know, like, now we talk about representation all day, but it's like back then, you know, was there representation? How did you find it? And how did you have that confidence to just like, you know, define your own reality as a musician?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with like having people that you trust, that you can confide in, people who can empathize and understand what it is that you're trying to do or like what you're going through. Really, really early on, I had like a really, really close friend, and I would talk her ear off about like all the things that I wanted to do. And I think to a certain extent, you know, I may be assuming, but I think to a certain extent, she also felt excited for me and inspired by like my desires. Because she had shared with me that the kind of artist that I want to be is the kind of artist that, you know, she finds that she enjoys listening to and following along, you know, the journey. And so there was a point in time where it was like, you know, I would be sharing with her like, you know, my desires for like aesthetics around my practice or like how, you know, my long-term goals, short-term goals, the kind of quality of life that I would like to have, like, you know, getting really granular about those things and like trying to embody the experience through like visualization and journaling and like all of those things for years. And I think I'm pretty lucky that I had someone so close to me in my life who has worked in music, has worked in communications, and like, you know, those things are really important. Like it's important to be in healthy, balanced relationships with folks who share the same values as you. Because so much of what we see, you know, in the media and the mainstream or even underground, is a communal effort. Even if it looks like it's just one person. Like, you know, you mentioned Beyonce earlier. Beyonce has her entire family invested in her when she was younger. You know, every single person was on payroll. Every single person was committed to like making sure that she had all of the, you know, vocal training and performance training. And she also knew that everyone had made sacrifices for her to be where she was. So she would never, you know, and she says this in interviews, like I could never like take advantage or take for granted like the sacrifices that people have made for me to be where I am. And so I think that's really important. It's something that doesn't really get highlighted often because we kind of live in this individualistic culture. But it's really a group effort and a village, you know?
And I think personally, I've definitely, at least before, have like not really realized the importance of community and like-minded community. Like, especially like growing up, it was never something that I thought was needed for success. Because I mean, you know, most things that at least I was familiar with, especially when it comes to education, it's like, it's an individual pursuit. You know what I'm saying? You get the degree, it's your degree, you know? And I never realized how much community matters, how much even just having solid people around you who love you, care about you, believe in you matters. Cause it's like, we're so hyped up on like, I can do it all. I'm the girl, whatever. And it's like, no, you too can benefit from, the love of other people. And it's like, you don't have to do everything by yourself. Like that's something that I had to learn as I grew older. And I would say like within the last few years, like it's a life hack. You don't know, not everybody has community. And some people like to say I did it by myself, but if you have it or if you can find it, it's for your benefit. So I love that that's something that helped you, like that boosted you up early on is having those safe spaces. When you first entered the university, what did you think you would do? Like, what did you think would be your career when you graduated?
I thought I was going to be a pharmacist, like my parents wanted me to be.
Oh, really? You were going to be a pharmacist. So were you in a science major before? Okay.
Yeah.
And after this revelation, you changed your major.
I did.
Okay. When was that? Like sophomore year?
Probably.
Okay.
I had like probably gotten to the end of my general education requirements, and I realized I didn't want to take 3 levels of calculus.
God forbid.
Yeah, right. And so I changed my major. I like, and it was like such a huge deal. I was like, okay, I think maybe I could just do engineering or something.
Yeah, like what's not pharmacy?
Yeah, and then it went from engineering to information systems management to computer engineering.
Wow.
To business, and then to sociology.
Okay.
Yeah.
We worked it on down
We
there.
worked it down. But it was like through those general education requirements, I was like discovering what I actually was interested in.
I love that. And yeah, I think a lot of people go in with the thing like, I'm going to do this. I actually was a what was that? Pre-med? Girl, that pre-med bug bit us all.
Listen,
oh my God.
It's the parents that bit us.
It's like, stop.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Thank God I'm not nobody's doctor.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly,
what?
right?
Oh my gosh. Anyway, yeah. And so you worked it down. But my thing is, now you're embarking on this journey of artistry. Were you thinking like, okay, what is it going to look like? You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, then there's that hesitation because pharmacy, engineering, medicine, that also involves security. And artistry is very undefined. What was your thought process behind that? Were you scared at all?
Absolutely. I mean, my parents remind me every day that, like they're like, what are you doing for retirement? What are you doing? And I think, there's part of me appreciates it because it's forcing me to think about how to be financially savvy in a way that will set myself up for the future. I don't want to be 70 touring, or like in bad shape, in bad health, because I've had to hustle and grind. And yeah, I think of artistry in the professional context as simply entrepreneurship. So if I was to be a business owner, a small business owner, if I was to own a boutique, how would I set myself up for success?
Yeah.
And, it's not like people don't like to talk about it in this way, but like you are a business when you're an artist.
Yeah.
And you are, no matter what you're doing, no matter what you call what you do, creating a product that people are going to purchase and consume.
Yeah.
And that is something that has been really heavily reinforced in my life these days. But when I was starting out, I was like very nebulous with like, the grounded part of things.
Yeah.
Like I was like, oh, I want to one day, perform in Europe, and I want to do, these things, and I want to live comfortably in a house in the country, or like whatever my goals were at the time. And I didn't really think practically about how I would do those things. I thought maybe one day I'd get a PhD, maybe I would teach, but like the tangible steps, like what steps am I taking? And fortunately, me just kind of experimenting and floating around worked to my benefit because I was crossing paths with so many people who were like professional artists.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot about the importance of documentation and had a lot of support, like writing artist statement and bio and like all these things that would later open the door for like receiving fellowships and grants and things that open the door to grad school.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. I love how it's like organic, very organically building or has been built for you because like even unraveling the layers and one thing we don't have enough time to talk about is what's going on inside when you're realizing I'm not going to be a pharmacist anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be an artist. Like,
Right.
so what does it mean? It's like, you know, your identity is changing a little bit and you have to embrace that as it's happening. But it is beautiful to know that it's happened very organically. And, you know, like you said, one thing has led to the next and fellowships and other opportunities and even grad school, which you just finished. Congratulations on your MFA. Obviously, you said you're an interdisciplinary artist. And so knowing that piece that you mentioned, right? Like obviously there's still bills to pay. We got to be financially stable. Does that ever impact which of your artist avenues you lean into at a particular time?
I think I'm pretty free flowing there as well. Like for me, my creative energy flows through like openness and curiosity. And so if I trust the process more than I fixate on the outcome or whatever is produced, then I find that I end up having a very unique product or outcome that usually is like intellectual or cerebral and conceptual and allows for me to be very unique and stand out in my field.
Okay.
So that's something that has been like solidified in grad school. Like I didn't think that I was going to apply to this creative technology program and end up weaving textiles and you know, doing like performance art stuff.
That's new.
Yeah. But not necessarily. And it's because throughout the journey, I'm always looking for opportunities for connection to the past. Because what's important to me is maintaining not only a track record of execution, but also being able to outline a consistent like methodology around praxis. So, for example, right now I'm working on writing a ontological framework around braiding as a framework for interdisciplinary practice. And when I finished my first year of grad school, what was really important to me was figuring out what my practice was because I do so many things like I mentioned before.
Yeah.
And I decided to go to grad school because I wanted to stop feeling like I was jumping from project to project to project. And like I had more of a cohesive, clear practice that could be funded and supported without any problems. Like, you know, no one wants to like, I won't say no one, but you know, it's a lot more enticing as an artist writing a proposal to say, I've been braiding for over 25 years and I have developed a framework around interdisciplinary practice through braiding and the salon as a studio space. And then being able to make these connections throughout your journey. I went to Berlin. I did these things. As I was growing and becoming a musician and performing in Detroit, I was also developing as an artist in the salon. And like, you know, being able to say like, yes, I am building something that is pushing the boundaries of form and is urgent and necessary in the current moment and like is unique to me. Like you can't just go out and find you know, a singer who
also braids.
and does these things. Yeah.
Dope.
Yeah.
So it's like you're drawing the line. Basically, you're drawing a line through all of your, all of the things that you've done, like all of your artistry. And that's really dope. And so I guess, do you ever feel like you're cheating on your other things? You know, because right now it's like, the weaving, the braiding, the music, you know, the musician shit. Will you? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like you're cheating? And like, how do you balance your energy between all these things? Like, cause they all give you something else, right? Like, it's like with me, I know if I'm writing, there's something I feel. If I'm singing, if I'm on stage, like they all give me something. And so how do you balance like the need for all of those things?
Well, right now, in this specific moment in time, I am doing multiple things.
Yeah.
So, you know, I just left the salon, and Saturday I'll be performing at the festival with the ensemble that I was on tour with.
Wow.
And I will be moving into an artist studio with a painter friend of mine whose hair I also braid.
Okay.
And
busy over there.
yeah, very busy, very busy.
Busy over there.
And then it's soon to be announced, but I am going to be receiving this fellowship through the Modern H. Brown Foundation.
Wow.
And
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'll have 4 months of like dedicated studio time and stipend and just, you know, critique and structure within the specific community of the foundation to like work on whatever it is that I want to work on.
Yeah.
And I think all of it, like, it feels like a spiral. Like, it feels like a healthy spiral.
Yeah.
Because in every moment, there is one thing that does call me. And it calls me because I need it to sustain the energy. So, like, braiding right now, I mentioned earlier on that, or maybe off camera, that I had applied for a job right after grad school because, you know, before I'd gone to grad school, I'd been working in arts administration and, you know, for nonprofit organizations as like program coordinator and administrative assistant, just doing, you know, things because I have this administrative savvy.
Yeah.
And I quit my job to focus on grad school. And then I was like, okay, well, I found a really good paying job that is aligned with the degree that I just got. And if, you know, God willing, if this is the path for me post-grad, like, he's going to open the door.
Yeah.
And literally the night of commencement, I get an email like close to midnight, which I think is odd, that I didn't get the position.
Aww.
But at the same time, I had spoken to someone maybe a few hours before, maybe 2 hours after commencement. Like, I walked off the stage into the museum to go to an opening.
Yeah.
And I see someone there and they're like, hey, we're going to give you X amount of dollars a month for the next few months so that you can pay for your studio.
Wow.
Which I've never experienced before. So it almost felt like, you know, I made the decision energetically.
Yeah.
And so now it's like my work, my practice isn't necessarily managing or navigating like any shame that might arise around having multiple means of sustaining my creative energy, but it's more so having faith.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like, and I love that you said that. I mean, because to even be where you are right now and how accomplished you are as an artist, it all started with you simply just leaning into your curiosity, like what felt good. But I guess like beyond that, I guess one thing is like, how did you even know it would turn out like this? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, because it's like, okay, if I take the jump, am I going to be KESSWA?
Right.
Because if I am, I'm a jump. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, nobody knows.
Yeah.
You couldn't have foreseen that things would unfold this way.
Yeah.
So what gives you that confirmation, like even to know like that this is what I should be doing with my time. This is purposeful. You know what I'm saying? Like to begin that journey.
I think a big thing that works to my benefit is I don't necessarily think about how things look. I think more so about how they feel and what it does for me on a deeply personal level.
Wow.
So when I was thinking through KESSWA earlier on, I wasn't thinking necessarily about like who I was going to be in community with or who would be interested in funding my practice or if I would go to Cranbrook or like any of these things. I was like, I know I want to go to school.
Yeah.
I know I want to do stuff internationally. I know I want to be based in Detroit. I know I consider myself at the time an Afrofuturist. I know that the legacy of techno influences my work, and these are the pillars of like my desire at this moment, and kind of allowing that clarity around those pillars to be the anchor or the seeds that get planted allows for me to have full circle moments in perpetuity. So like, you know, I knew that like techno was really influential to me as a musician just because like we grew up listening to it on the radio and like it was just like so like mind-blowingly beautiful to hear like on the radio, hear these DJs play all of this like music that sounds like electricity, honestly. And only to find later on that some of the people that produced that music that influenced me as a child still live in Detroit. And now I just braided one of the godfathers of techno's hair yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it's like, it's like...
It's very much alignment. It's
you know
very much like we're on a path.
We're on a path. And if I had shamed myself out of being a braider because it's not a full-time salary job, or, you know, then I wouldn't be able to receive, like, be in alignment with just who I truly am. I think my work isn't necessarily, like, the thing that I work the hardest at practicing isn't, like, you know, trying to be the best at what I do, because I think I try to be the best at who I am. And in that earnest, authentic, like showing up and deciding every day, like, this is who I am. This is what I'm going to be. This is what feels good to me. This is how I'm going to present myself. This is how I'm going to articulate myself. Like, it either opens or closes the door.
Yeah. Like yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Like it's all determined on that first decision you make to commit to yourself.
Yeah.
And then everything after that is like a domino effect.
Exactly.
Right? It's like if you choose this path of this is who I am, then these things happen. But if you choose another path, then the other things happen. But this is obviously like in alignment, and it works because this is also who you are.
Right.
Yeah.
And only you really know who you are.
Yeah.
You know, like even if you try to convince yourself that you're not who you really are, your life is going to respond to that.
Yeah.
And so...
Say more about respond to that.
Yeah.
How does life respond to us faking?
Oh, gosh. So for me, the path of least...
We're drinking wine today, y'all. Love it. Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
So I used to like say that I used to think of my like life as like this thing that is alive and like responding to me through resistance or like lack of resistance. And sometimes there's good resistance. Like sometimes there are moments of contraction or constriction that like help to strip back all the unnecessary stuff and like just help you get clear on like what it is that you need, what it is that you desire. And it does take like faith and openness and humility to like move through that time to get to the expansion part of things. But for me, let's say, for example, so I think 2019, I was doing hair full time. Wasn't making a lot of money back then because I just didn't have like an entrepreneurial spirit. And I decided to go to cosmetology school because I was like, well, if I'm going to do this, like I need to be able to do more than box braids. Like I have to do, you know, color and cut and all of the stuff. You had to be there super early and it was like a full-time commitment and you're not getting paid. So I wasn't...
You're paying for it.
Yeah, I'm paying for it.
Unfortunate.
And I also didn't really have like other sources of income that were sustainable.
Yeah.
So I really felt stretched pretty thin. And I remember one evening I like went to a wine bar to like hang with a friend and I had my trunk of materials in my car and someone broke into my car and stole my trunk.
No!
And so I went to school the next day and I told them what happened and they were like, unfortunately, there's nothing that we can do. Like, you know, you can try to, you know, continue along with whatever, you know, with a couple combs and stuff. Yeah, it was
Oh my
crazy.
gosh.
It was crazy. And I was like, well, that's not going to work because I had a blow dryer, I had flat irons, I had like all of this stuff in my case. And I need all of that to be able to do the practical side of things. And like, you guys don't have extra stuff. So like, how am I going to do my work? And so I ended up just dropping out.
Wow.
And I dropped out like probably, I want to say like maybe November, December of 2019. And I was like, I'm just going to look for a job. Like, I've never worked a full-time job before.
Lucky.
I know, right?
Lucky.
I'm just going to look for a job. So I like applied for this job, which was like my first arts admin position. And then 2 weeks into that job, COVID happened.
Wow.
And my job was supposed to be like engagement coordinator. So I was supposed to be out in community, helping facilitate and organize like these meetings.
Yeah.
And they were like giving us one remote day a month, and that changed to a full remote job.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what happened with the cosmetology school. My understanding is that things were on pause, and then eventually it went to like remote and hybrid. And I don't know. I really don't know what happened, but I feel like that was my intuition and like life kind of telling me like, okay, this, not right now. Like, this isn't thing. Who knows? Maybe one day I'll go to cosmetology school and finish. But the more I commit to hair in a way that's unique to me, the more I realize that like, I don't necessarily need cosmetology school for what I'm doing.
Yeah.
There are lots of things like, you don't need to be a cosmetologist to do a sew-in. You know?
I do sew-ins, girl.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't
I've been doing sew-ins
to do it quickly. You don't need, you know.
I can give you some braids.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you don't need, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and then what I'm doing with like braids and locks and stuff is more like editorial styling. And I've had opportunities to do things in that realm. Like, you know, I worked with the lip bar. I've like supported another artist doing Justine Sky's hair.
Wow, yeah.
I did today. The client that I was servicing before I got here was preparing for a shoot for a short film project.
Wow, yeah.
So it's like, oh, I get to do the creative things and like explore things and build clientele that, you know, respect what I do, trust me, and allow me to like, you know, do my thing instead of like trying to fit into this structure. But that to me outlined like a redirection in a path that felt like super tense, super draining. Like whenever something feels draining to me, I take it as an indication that like I'm out of alignment.
I need to borrow that.
Yeah.
Because like, I love that. And I think, and with everything you're saying, it's like, it's very clear, like alignment is really like the name of the game for you. You know what I'm saying? And I love how in touch you are with your intuition and like how much you trust it. And were you like that from like a young kid? No.
Well, when I was young, yes.
Okay.
My parents are pretty anxious. So I have to like, it's really taken my own like building of community and like culture in my life that feels like generative and supportive outside of the context of my family for me to be able to be this way. Because I think I was talking to someone and they were like, it sounds like you need to see demonstrations of your talent in order for you to trust.
Wow.
You know?
I love that.
And so I started to like document that. Like, okay, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. When I didn't know what was going to happen, this thing came up and happened. And that helps me have like receipts that I can measure against my inner critic or like the, you know, the part of me that's like really anxious and unsure and needs control, you know? Because at the end of the day, like a lot of us have lived through some really like unexpected circumstances that have maybe thrown us off track or been like tragic and we're still here and we've responded, you know, in ways that allowed us to still be here. And so I feel like the older I get, the more I just embrace the fact that like you can plan, but like there's already a plan.
There's already a plan.
Yeah.
Wow. I love that.
Yeah.
Do you consider yourself spiritual?
You can say that.
Okay. Okay. When you said that, I'm like,
Yeah.
well, I thought of a verse
Yeah.
about like, what does it say? We make our plans. I don't know. I'm not going to quote it. Anyway.
Make plans of God laugh.
Yes. Or so, there's something, I don't know. But yes, along those lines.
Yeah.
And that's what it made me think of. And I wonder, like, do you ever think of like, well, because you worked in like, you tried to work a regular job.
Yes, I did.
But do you, and then I know you were mentioning like another opportunity that you originally sought out. Do you ever, because you have a very high profile as an artist, right? And do you ever wonder like if that could possibly conflict with if you ever did want to go a more traditional route? And even like applying for your MFA, it's like, you know, do you ever think about like, do you ever have to like balance that like, hi, I'm KESSWA. Whereas it's like, oh, I'm KESSWA, you know? Do you ever feel like that distinction having to come out?
Oh, yeah. It always conflicts.
Oh, wow.
Yes, there's never an opportunity. There's never a moment where I'm choosing to work for someone else that I don't have to put my own work for myself on the back burner.
Really?
Yeah, but I never do, which is what creates the tension.
See, you don't answer that.
I know, I'm sorry.
I love it. She said, yes, there's a moment, and it never happens.
Yeah, it never happens. It happens, but I just push through it because I don't see these jobs as like permanent, if that makes sense. Like, it's like, okay, it's a means to an end. And the means to an end can be, I want to have more insight around arts admin and funding structures and philanthropy in Detroit. So I'm going to go work for this nonprofit that does, you know, works with the city and architects and city planners and figure out what kind of budgets these people are being paid and like what kind of foundations are funding and, you know, build relationships as an employee of this organization.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that first job that I worked after quitting cosmetology school connected me in this like really significant way to an organization that would later invite me to collaborate with Esperanza Spalding on a song. And so it just put me in
It's
community.
like, wow. Yeah. It's like, where's the book?
But you know what I mean? It's kind of...
Just drop the names, don't you?
It's the desire. It's the alignment with the desire. It's like, okay, this isn't working. Cosmetology school and like being a braider solely isn't working. Yeah. What I am realizing I desire is more structure and funding around my creative practice that is non-commercial. So how can I align myself with the spaces, with the communities that are also seeking those things? Yeah. Because if there are artists seeking funding, there are funders seeking artists. That's a bar. You know what I mean? That's a bar. It's true. Yeah. I mean, I don't know about right now. Right. What's going on. Tight. Yeah. But at that time, it's like, you know, people don't realize that like these organizations and even institutions, like, it's not to say that they are not a part of community, but so much of their work is done outside of community that it's hard for them to keep up with the flow and influx of like new emerging talent that is working at a level that is professional and ready to be supported by like a structure. Yeah. And so you often see like the same handful of artists receiving the same grants or doing the same shows and stuff. And it's because they have built that relationship. Yeah. And a lot of folks don't know how to build the relationship. And they also don't know maybe how to do some of the basic things like write an artist statement or a bio or put together a portfolio. And so all of these things were things that I learned while I was working at those arts admin jobs, but also learned from people I was in community with who were in that world. Yeah. And so, yeah, it really does take a village and also just clarity and strategy. Like, I knew that I wasn't Beyonce. Yeah. I'm not Beyonce. Not Beyonce. I'm not Rihanna, you know, but I'm Kess. Yes, you are. And so what does it look like for Kess, who is in Detroit, to like find a structure that feels supportive around creative practice, even if it's not paying me, you know, bi-weekly with benefits in this very linear way. But I think as I've taken those positions at organizations, like it's never been like, okay, I'm gonna work here for a year and then I'm gonna get what I need and leave. Like, you know, have always been like, yeah, it'd be great to work at a job, have a job that works in alignment with what it is that I'm trying to do. So I always work at organizations that feel aligned with like the mediums that I'm working in, or that there's opportunity for like reciprocal like support. But it always gets to a point where like, are you going to take the 2-month residency in Berlin, or are you going to stay at the job and, you know, do the like meeting minutes?
Yeah.
You know?
And you always choose Berlin.
I always choose Berlin.
I love it.
But I choose Berlin and then I'll give you an 8-week notice.
Yeah, respectfully.
Yeah.
And it's not about doing people grimy. I don't think anybody is getting that idea, but I just think it's such a beautiful thing to own who you are and to know truly what you want and to stand on it, you know? And like there is losses with it, right? There's sacrifices that you make, but at the end of the day, you come out with yourself. And that's the most important thing. Like, I love how easy it is for you too. It's like, I say no.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's because for so long, like in my 20s, I saw my peers graduate first and foremost on time, which I didn't do, and jump straight into these careers as essentially like adult children.
She said it. No.
You know, and have to like, you know, take on all of this responsibility and sacrifice so much living. And though they had money to travel and, you know, buy cool things and live in nice apartments and stuff, like they weren't necessarily able to like explore their creativity. Yeah. And that felt like more important to me. Yeah. And so I was always hesitant to like look for a job or apply for like a full-time job somewhere, especially in like as a person with a liberal arts degree, you know, sociology and like just, you know, bachelor's, like you're not finding anything over a certain amount. And so, but you're working super, super hard. Yeah. And so it was like, yeah, I don't want to do that. But my degree is shaping a context around like the research that I'm doing and like how I approach my practice and like who I'm in conversation with and the conversations that I can have. Yeah. So it's a different level of utilization of like the resources and the skills that I've been able to like develop over time. Yeah. But essentially, I realize, especially now more than ever, that I've always been an entrepreneur. And that takes me back to the conversation I was having earlier on, is that choosing an artist life is choosing an entrepreneur life. And so, you know, sometimes, some days, you have to put the business hat on and you have to think about like structures for funding. Do I need a fiscal sponsor? You know, am I going to apply for grants? Am I going to do consulting work with folks? Yeah. Like, am I going to do clientele like approach? Or is this the time for me to just get lost in the studio and like allow myself to be transformed and like make discoveries around like creative practice and, you know, spirituality or whatever, you know, you're seeking to do. Yeah. And I think there's a time and place for everything. And there's always going to be moments of tension and release, you know, but that tension, it really serves the best purpose for like informing like what the release can be. Wow. The tension serves a purpose for informing what the release can be. So what you're going through is telling you what you need to create next or what you need to learn next or what you need to do next. That's a beautiful way to look at ups and downs. And I think you're absolutely right. Like, and you're very honest about you've chosen an artist's life. And like we were saying earlier, I think it's just about standing 10 toes down in whatever you choose. And some people don't choose artist life, you know? And I mean, even if you don't, I think like you've mentioned with this release, right? And how much like being an artist is a part of you. It's like, there still needs to be a space or an avenue for it. So I love the fact that, you know, you are balancing entrepreneurship and that's even, to be honest, you're working more than a 9 to 5. I know. It's a 24/7. It's like every day you wake up, it's like, how are you going to get to it? You know? So yeah, I think there's a trade-off. I think there's sacrifices, but I think like you're saying,
if just choosing, just knowing who you are and staying loyal to that, and everything unfolds the way it's supposed to. If you could say one thing to address the lowest moment you felt before you began this journey, right? Like if you think back to the Kess who was making the decision to shift the past, what is one word of encouragement you would give to her?
Good question.
That's my first good question this interview, y'all.
That's good. It's good.
I'm cooking.
Dang, one word of encouragement. You know, I feel like what I would tell myself is what people that I love and trust have told me, which is the process is the promised land. And I say that because in my experience looking back, a lot of the opportunities that I have received that have like been deeply impactful in my life were like inaugural. Like, you know, they didn't exist when I was like hoping and wishing for an opportunity for something to like happen. And so knowing that and knowing that my approach to creativity and just living life is experiential and experimental, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to be hyper fixating on like an outcome. I think it's a good idea to be clear on like outcome in a way that is grounded, you know, but it doesn't need to be like, I need to have an album released by a record label so I can tour. And, you know, it's like, I want to tour and I want to tour with in these particular constraints or with this particular context. And I want to be able to focus on just singing and not have to be a producer. And I want to be in a relationship with a producer that I trust. Like, it's almost like when you're saying a prayer, like, you know, you try to be as detailed as possible. You know, you may ask like your creator or whatever to meet you at the point of your needs. And like, it's like being very clear on that, writing those things down, and then letting things be. Like when I was in a software engineering program at Wayne State, I had
different world.
I know, very different world, very short-lived world also, but not really because it opened the door for this MFA program. But I used to say that I used to use code, like writing code as a metaphor for manifestation.
Oh, wow.
So when you are writing code, you have to be extremely detailed. And there is a syntax or a structure of the language that needs to be taken into account. You know, every programming language has a different kind of syntax. And so you write all this code, you might write several paragraphs of code, which are just commands. And then you press enter and then the code runs. And you can't interrupt it. You have to let it run all the way to the end so that the computer can execute the task. And to me, that's kind of how life is. And I feel like even right now, I mean, every moment and every day is an opportunity to write the code of your life. But you have to trust it and let it run. And anytime you go back in and try and stop the program from running and tweaking it, you're like creating unnecessary glitches, you know? And so that was the only thing I took away from software engineering at Wayne State. It was just like...
And that was a purpose for that. So it served its purpose.
I mean, it was very poetic. And I feel like even today, you know, I'm still running on the code that I wrote from like 2014. 2014 to 2017. And it took those years of me being very meticulous and clear about how I wanted to experience life and how I wanted it to feel for me to be existing in alignment, because that solidifying of visceral experience is now an internal compass. Whenever I experience that feeling in my body, then I'm like, oh, that's where I want to go. That's where I want to be. You know, even if it's subtle. But having such a preoccupation with how things are supposed to look. And, you know, one thing that I learned during COVID when I was working that job was that there were a lot of shoulds in my life that I needed to interrogate and dissect. And so anytime I find myself thinking or saying I should do something or things should be this way, I take that as an indication that I've internalized someone else's expectations, and I dissect it. And so I don't use the word should either.
Like even okay. Because like, so even if you had something you wanted and you were like, I should start working out, how do you interrogate that?
Why do I feel like I should start working out? And it's not to say that working out is bad.
Yeah.
But it's like, I want to start working out, not I should start working out.
Yeah.
Because that, you know what I mean?
Wow, because it's coming from inside. When you say I want to, not I should.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So yeah, there are lots of things that constriction helped kind of reframe and illuminate about my thought patterns, about just the history of like experiences in my life that I could go back and be like, oh yeah, whenever I do feel like I should, like I thought I should go to cosmetology school because I'm working at a salon, right? And it's like, actually, no, I get to Cranbrook, the first show that I saw as a student there was a huge exhibition of this artist named Sonia Clark who works exclusively with hair.
Okay.
I didn't have like any exposure to that kind of possibility of hair artistry until I decided to be a student at Cranbrook.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And had I gone to cosmetology school, I probably wouldn't have found it necessary to go get an MFA.
No.
Probably would have felt like, well, I should open a salon. I should be building clientele.
Yeah.
But instead, you know, I decided to take the artist route, and the artist route led me back to hair in a completely different context.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, my practice is faith and trusting the process and being so deeply grounded in and present in the process that every moment feels like an opportunity to make a decision in alignment or out of alignment with what feels like an internal compass.
Wow. That is beautiful. And I, in this, literally my phrase of the year is hurry up and wait. Because I look over my life and I realize how many times like I've said I wanted something and then like I get on the path to it and then I'm like, this is not what it is. Rip it out. And I literally like rip up the foundation. And so to hear you say that, it makes me realize like, yes, you really do. In the illustration you gave with the coding makes so much sense. Because it's like, you gotta wait to see what the output is. Like you've put in the input and now you gotta let it put something out. So I mean, I could really just marvel for days at the alignment. Like it's amazing. and I know that this is intentional, right? Like these are decisions you've made that have kept you in alignment essentially. And so it does seem like the most important thing is making the decision, having faith and staying committed to the path that you choose. So, in wrapping up, for people who are just getting started, right, who are wanting to recover their artistry, right, wanting to set themselves free, come out of the artist closet, what are some resources that you can share, like for people who need help taking that first step? Or even just advice, you know, tell them what to do. Yeah.
Well, I feel like the thing that I want to say sounds so cliche, especially in this moment in pop culture. But like one of the first things, and I don't think I've ever even finished the book, but The Artist's Way.
Okay, it's in my backpack.
No.
It's in my backpack.
The artist dates and like just journaling, like really just trying to understand your psychological needs.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time, what keeps us from being creative or like exploring, you know, is this need to have it all figured out and also fear of taking risks and being vulnerable. And I think what The Artist's Way does really well is like helps you build up towards this vulnerability of like approaching a possible creative life through artist dates. Like just go and be around art, go be with artists, go be by yourself in a museum, you know? But I also think in just like journaling, like about your feelings, about your day, about your desires, your dreams, whether that's like your desires for the future or also just like what happened in your dreams last night, is like really, really powerful. And I think the more attuned you can be to like your what's going on internally, the more you can integrate your internal compass to your like lived experience.
Wow. Whew, masterclass. Oh my gosh, no. So many great takeaways. I literally am reading The Artist's Way right now, doing my morning pages.
Yeah.
And it is really helpful. It's a really, really insightful book. I love it. And I just agree. And I understand, like, yeah, I think artistry is something we have to hold on to. You know, even myself as a recovering, it is something you have to hold on to and just be connected to in some way, shape, form. And like, even if it is one of plus other things that you do, like, you just can't let it go. Cause I just think it's so much bigger than us. So
True.
I am so inspired by this conversation and honestly love all that you're doing. And a super fan.
Thank you.
And honestly, thank you so much for coming and sitting down and sharing all this insight. And I know anyone who watches this video is going to be really, really inspired and just able to learn so much from the intentionality that goes into artistry. Because I literally had this thought this morning, and it's so funny because you're here and we're doing this interview, but there is preparation, there's performance. And I think it's so easy to hyperfixate on the performance piece of things and forget about how much goes on in the background and how much you need that season of preparation and that time of preparation, because you can't correct it on the spot. Right. You know, when you're there, when you're in the moment, anything you're doing, whether that's just regular work or actual performing, like, the day you do it is not the time to think about what you're going to do. No, it's not the time to practice the behavior. Yeah. It's not the time to set the intentions. Like, that had to happen way, way before. So there's a process to building up to this level of intentionality, of alignment, of being in purpose. You know, it takes time. And so I'm hearing from you and learning of your story, definitely learning to give myself more grace in the build up to that. And I hope that's what you guys can take from it as well. Tell us where we can find your music.
You can find my music on all streaming platforms, on YouTube, in local record shops, some international. KESSWA Soft and EP is on vinyl, and then I'm also a featured artist on Shigeto's Cherry Blossom Baby album, which came out in October 2024.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kess, once again for sitting down. I'm going to link the resources that Kess mentioned, specifically The Artist's Way and any other resources that she wants to share. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today, and that has been another episode. So we'll see you on the next one. Bye.